Well guys, welcome back to video number 2, and in this wee video it's the follow on from video 1, so if you follow along video by video might be better. But this wee video is entitled Why We Tell Ourselves the Story, okay? And it's about, at this stage, it's about becoming aware of the things that we're unaware of. So if you're unaware of how your thoughts and your story develops, the fact that you've started becoming aware of how that's all built up in your subconscious mind gives you a better opportunity and a better chance to work through that and change perspectives on things in the past. So an example for me would be education. I never went to school. I hated school. I deplored school. But I thought the school, for me, I thought it was because I was stupid and I couldn't learn in school. I've since found out later on in life that I actually enjoy learning, and when I go back on my school days, there was a lot more happening than just me not liking school. So when I looked at all that and changed it, I have since earned a degree and done some postgrad studies twice in Queen's University. So I know I'm quite intelligent and quite academic that way, because I changed the narrative. When I first got a degree and all those things, I had what is called imposter syndrome, and the reason why I had that is because my self-concept was poor. But I'm going to explain that a bit more so you may understand it a wee bit better. So what we have in our mind, we have 6 faculties in our mind. They are perception, imagination, memory, intuition, reason, and willpower. And the one that we're going to focus on today is perception, because how we perception is not reality, but it's your reality. How we perceive the world, okay, is not how the world is, it's how we are. So let's say you grew up in chaos and you were never learned about emotional intelligence and all that sort of stuff. You're going to perceive the world from that point of view. But if that was, on the other hand, you were brought up very emotionally mature and emotionally supported, your view on the world is going to be quite different. You view the world as you are, not as it is. So in the perception, okay, we have a thing called perspective. So we all have a perspective. That's what makes us all different. We can all look out the window and look at the same tree, but we'll all have a different perspective on what the tree's like. No one will have the exact same perspective on the tree. So it's the lens you look out from is how you experience it. So that, hope that's clear. So within perception, you've got perspective, okay? So let's just say perspective. Okay, so your perspective on something is what gets you through life. It's what keeps you safe. It tells you when to move and when not to move. Perspective is really key in this part of the video series, okay? So from our perspective is how we view the world. So then, let's say a situation comes along, an experience maybe, a situation, right? Situation comes along, okay? So we perceive the situation the way we are. So let's say, we'll do the one, my daddy left when I was a kid. My daddy actually did leave when I was a kid. He went to prison, but my perspective on that situation was my daddy left us and went to jail. Until I worked that through, that's the view that I had right up until I was an adult. So the perspective was my dad left, right? My perspective on the situation that he left led me to build an inner self-talk, also known as a narrative, okay? And the perspective on the situation and the inner self-talk, my dad mustn't have cared about me. He was more busy out doing what he was doing and ending up in jail and all. That was my thinking around that there. So that inner self-talk then became my narrative. So then, I viewed the world's cruel, and, my dad's went away, and, I mustn't have been that important. So that was the inner self-talk that I took on board, and that's how I started viewing life in every avenue that I was involved in, So it creates the inner self-talk, which then leads to your self-concept, and I spoke about self-concept at the start, because your self-concept is the most important thing that you have. So I can give you loads of examples on that, but my one was about the education. I went and done a degree, a postgrad diploma in criminology, a postgrad diploma in youth justice, but I still felt like an imposter. And until I went back with a clear perspective and looked at that whole process, I realised that my self-concept was very poor around education, and I changed that. Where today I'm thriving in education. You know, I love to learn now. That's why I do videos and stuff. I like to teach people what I've learned, because it makes life that wee bit easier. So you've got the perspective on the situation, okay? Creates the inner self-talk, which is also known as the narrative, which then develops your self-concept. I grew up in West Belfast, 80s, 70s, 80s, through the 90s. And I remember young lads from my area who were amazing footballers and amazing boxers. And this is the reason why I'm telling it, because this is important. And they were amazing at their sport. And they were told that every time they were a great footballer, a great boxer, and everybody was complimenting them, telling them this. But they didn't make it till the top. And today it makes so much sense to me for obvious reasons, and that reason would be they had a very, very poor self-concept. And that probably went back till the 0 to 7 formative years, when their subconscious was wide open and all the negative things had piled in, and no one ever showed them the way out of that. They pressed on their talents in football and in boxing, but when it came to the crunch, they couldn't step forward into the limelight because their self-concept was poor. You could be the best at anything in the world, but if your self-concept's poor, you're not going to really do much with it. So why I'm showing you is, so perspective on the situation, the inner self-talk, the narrative begins, and that forms your self-concept. So if it starts at the thing, the perspective, and it goes round, okay, till your self-concept, and it keeps looping, and it keeps looping, and it keeps looping. This is what we call the mind loop, okay? Most people are stuck in a negative mind loop. Mind loops are good as long as they're positive and reinforcing, but if they're negative, it's what creates your outer world, your external world. Like I said, perception is not reality, but it's your reality, and we all have a different perspective. We view the world as we are, not as the world is. So if you've got perspectives on situations that it's negative and people are not worth trusting and you're unworthy and you're unlovable, that'll create an inner talk that'll keep you stuck. You know, if you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. And then that inner self-talk will create your self-concept, and then you'll believe that this loop going round will tell you that you'll never amount to nothing and there's no point in trying, and you know, the loop goes on and on. What you want to do with your perception, so basically your perspective is a concept and how you view everything. So what you want to do is you want to go back with the knowledge that you have now and the learning that you have now at 30 or 40 or 50 years of age, if you're still stuck in these negative loops, and you want to go back with that perspective. And for me, it was the education. So I'll give you the steps. My perspective was that education wasn't for me. The inner talk was that it was stupid and was never going to amount to nothing. This formed a self-concept that it was stupid, and then just it suited me because then I just didn't have to apply myself or try. When I learned about all this stuff and how the mind and stuff works, the conscious and the subconscious, I went back and looked at that process, and I looked at the perspective. And the perspective on the education was, you know, in my head it was because I was stupid, but when I looked at it, there was a lot more going on in my life when I was at school. There was a lot of other things that I needed to worry about and concentrate on other than an education. So for me, the inner talk just told me, sure, you're stupid anyway, don't try. This form of self-concept, I don't need to apply myself. And that was easier for me at that time because of what was going on in my life. But when I revisited that with more knowledge, the more information I got, the more things that I could do to change it. So I went back and reviewed this, changed the perspective on education. I changed it till I actually really enjoy and love education now. My inner self-talk started getting bigger and better, that I was capable. I've got a degree, I've got 2 postgrads, I do other things, I teach courses, I do all that stuff. So I started building that up in my self-talk, that I'm really good at what I do. And my self-talk got bigger and bigger. So my self-concept is now that education is not a problem to me, and I can do anything when it comes to academia, education, courses or anything. So change the narrative by going back and fixing the perspective. So put your learning to the old perspective and change the perspective on whatever it is that's coming up for you. It's never the thing that really hurts us. The thing back then, you know, when I grew up, I had a lot of adversities, and it wasn't the things that hurt me more than anything. It was the actual stories, the inner narrative that I created that made it much worse. So when I go back now and look at it, you know, I did work around my mother, my father. I used to blame them for everything, called them everything under the sun. And when I learned about how all these thoughts and stuff and your inner narrative is built, and I went back with a fresher perspective and looked at it and seen that my mother and father had problems of their own. My dad went to jail, my mum was left for 4 kids. They were on her own. You know, she was doing the best that she possibly could. And when I went back and looked at that there, it changed my perspective on the situation, which brought me a lot closer to both my parents. So guys, I hope you get the message, what I'm telling you. The perception is key to all this. Your perception and perspective is key. If you can go back, if you have a thought loop that continuously tells you you're unworthy and you're unlovable, go back to where you picked that up. Look at it from the perspective that you're in now, with the knowledge you have now. Change the perspective about the situation that you were in. Change the inner talk. So every time the inner talk comes in, work hard to change it. Once it's changed, by the way. Work hard to change it, and that will then just change your whole self-concept. And from a better self-concept, you'll do whatever you need to do in life. You'll chase the education, you'll chase the career path, you'll chase the dreams. You won't just sit in your house and go, I'm not worth it, I'm not worthy. Guys, there's a section in the workbook for this, so please fill the section out in the workbook. Watch the video and do the workbook. It reinforces the learning. And guys, just remember, you're worth every second that you're putting into this for yourselves. Thank you, guys.